Bryce Harper looks like he's heating up. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, May 8th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Today on the show, we've got hitters who are picking things up, some potential sell-high pitchers, Willson Contreras, unfortunate replacements, and much more. Let's jump in.
Holy cow! How about that?
All right, Scott, you are up. Player of the night.
My player of the night is Cody Bellinger, who was back from the IL here on what's today? Tuesday. He's back from the IL Tuesday, and he had a big game right away, 3 for 4 with the home run. It was his 6th home run of the year, and now he's up to an 826 OPS, very good. Batting average is 250, but you could, the batting average wasn't the thing we were worried about with Cody Bellinger coming in. We were worried about his very modest exit velocities translating to the same power output we saw last year. And that really hasn't been a problem. It wasn't a problem before the injury. And here in his first game back, it still doesn't seem like a problem. That's 6 home runs he has now in 88 at-bats, 101 plate appearances if you prefer. So an even better home run pace than we saw from him last year. An even better home run pace than we saw from him last year. And meanwhile, the strikeout rate, which was, other than the top line stats, among the underlying stats, the strikeout rate was the thing that stood out as most improved for Cody Bellinger. That's carried over. He's still striking out about 16% of the time. So I don't think we got to worry so much about that batting average staying in the 250 range. I think we should mostly just be encouraged that the power has been there for him. And now that he's healthy again, I would consider him must start.
And we desperately needed Bellinger back because, as we talk about a lot, outfield has not been the greatest position so far this season. Sounds like we could get a couple other names back soon. Seiya Suzuki starting a rehab assignment on Wednesday. So nice to see Cody Bellinger back. Looking into his profile, he might be selling out a little bit for power this year. He had a 59% fly ball rate entering this game. It is a smaller sample size because obviously Bellinger missed some time. A little bit weird that he hasn't attempted a stolen base so far this season as well. Stolen bases can be fickle, obviously, but would like to see Cody Bellinger running. I agree. Nice that the strikeout rate is down and that the power metrics have been there and look pretty good so far this season for Cody Bellinger. He's back. Get him back in your lineups. Don't think there's much more to add on him. My player of the night is going to be Patrick Sandoval, who's made 2 strong starts in a row. He was at the Pirates, which obviously is a very good matchup right now. He threw 7 shutout innings, 3 hits, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts with 17 swinging strikes on 103 pitches. 9 of those 17 came on the changeup, 4 on the slider, 3 on the sinker. Did a great job limiting the hard contact, and he has changed his pitch mix. Over the past 3 starts, Patrick Sandoval is completely fading his 4-seam fastball, and that is a great idea because his fastball and his sinker have been getting crushed so far this season. We've said for years that Sandoval has a great changeup, and in fact, we would like to see him throw that changeup even more than he does, but the slider has been a solid pitch for him as well. Looks like he's starting to figure that out, Scott. Pitching backwards a little bit more, leading with those secondary pitches, and it has worked. What has also worked for Patrick Sandoval is that he's only allowed 3 total walks over his last 3 starts. So walks could be a huge issue for him. In fact, they still have been this year. It's 3.9 walks per 9. But he's doing things differently. He's getting swinging strikes, and he's widely available. 37% rostered. How much are you buying this recent run and change in pitch mix from Patrick Sandoval?
I've been faked out a few times by Patrick Sandoval over the years, as we all have, because he's been good at getting swings and misses, but hasn't been very good at much else. And, even the big whiff rates he was generating weren't necessarily translating to big strikeout rates. So it was, I don't know. I'd kind of written him off, and the way he started this season certainly didn't inspire much confidence either. But yeah, when you say he's completely faded his four-seamer, like he's completely faded his four-seamer. He threw 3 in this game when it was his most used pitch prior to these last 3 starts. So yeah, that's a stark turnaround. And even if you factor in those first starts that weren't very good, Patrick Sandoval now, his ERA estimators are shockingly good. He has a 289 FIP and a 340 xFIP. xERA isn't updated yet, but it was, it was good too. It was below 4. And that's obviously good. Now, I do think the fact that he's allowed only 2 home runs, that there's been some good home run luck there. I do think Patrick Sandoval is going to remain good at home run prevention because he tends to put the ball on the ground. But that might be influencing those FIP measurements specifically, that the fact that he's only allowed 2 home runs. But I'm definitely intrigued by this change in approach and throwing his best pitches more, and the fact that the strikeouts have been so good in his last 2 starts. I think he's still going to struggle to throw strikes, and they're going to, the starts are going to be on the shorter end. The whip's going to be on the higher end because of that. I'm not ready to say Patrick Sandoval is one of those like high priority ads off the waiver wire. But if you're one of the few people who has a spot to play with amid all of the pitching surplus and the huge number of injuries that's probably bled onto your bench, even if you're in a league with IL spots, if you happen to have a spot to play with all that going on, then I do think Sandoval is worthy of consideration.
So the 2 most added starting pitchers on CBS are John Means and Christian Scott. I think clearly those 2 are ahead of Patrick Sandoval in the pecking order right now. The number 3 and 4 most added starting pitchers, likely because of a 2-star week, Cole Irvin and Colin Ray. I think we'd both take Sandoval over those 2, right?
Over Colin Ray, and who was the first one?
Cole Irvin.
Yeah, I'd take Sandoval over both of them.
The name that Chris and I spoke about yesterday who had a good start was Simeon Woods Richardson. Would you take Patrick Sandoval over him?
I would. I didn't see a lot that really boosted my confidence in Simeon Woods Richardson. I'm willing to keep an open mind. He's so young, and I know there has been an increase in velocity. I think compared to last season in the minors, but it's still not great velocity. So I'm pretty skeptical of Simeon Woods Richardson and would rather take a flyer on Sandoval.
As I mentioned, Sandoval 37% rostered. It looks like he lines up for the Rangers next week. So don't think I would want to play him in that matchup, though I'm seeing now the Rangers are actually pretty bad against lefties this season. I think it's kind of a pick them up. Let's see where this goes. I do agree. I think the control is probably still going to be a little bit finicky at times and a problem for Patrick Sandoval, but we should not ignore what he's doing. And we'll compare him to a couple other waiver wire pitchers a little bit later on in the show. Want to give an honorable mention to those Texas Rangers who went off against the Oakland A's. They put up 15 runs on 19 hits. Marcus Semien had a huge game, went 4 for 5 with his 6th home run, added 3 runs and 5 RBI. Semien's off to a great start. Only 1 steal. Don't love that, but everything else looks good for Marcus Semien. Jonah Heim went 4 for 4 with 2 RBI and 3 runs scored. He is now batting over 300 for the season with a 776 OPS. Nate Lowe has hit well since returning. He went 2 for 4 with a double, 2 walks, and 2 RBI. He is now batting 322 with an 870 OPS in 16 games. And Leody Taveras, 3 for 5 with a walk, 3 runs, and 2 RBI. Over his last 10 games, he is batting 382 with 1 homer and a 32% line drive rate, only 15% rostered. Scott, is Leody Taveras someone you would look into adding in 5 outfielder leagues?
Well, I wish I had included him among my 10 sleeper hitters for this week. He did get an honorable mention on the podcast, but
I remember you bringing him up. Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't on the official list. I did say the Rangers have far and away the best matchups and recommended Nate Lowe. So I'm glad he's come through. And I think he's I think there's a good chance Nate Lowe just turns out to be a must-start player, because certainly he was 2 years ago. The lineup context is great. The plate discipline's very good. I really like Nate Lowe almost as much as I like somebody like Anthony Rizzo. It's pretty close between those two, and I think everybody recognizes the contributions Rizzo has made in fantasy this year. But Leody Taveras, he's somebody who might be like a 15 homer, 15 steal guy without being hugely impactful in batting average. He was 14-14 last year, so he wasn't far off. I don't see the upside beyond that, and that's the upside. So, I was kind of dismissing or kind of downplaying some of the enthusiasm that's out there for Tommy Pham. Kind of for the same reason. Like, okay, maybe he's a 15-15 guy who's not especially impactful in batting average. And I guess Taveras could be that. Obviously, much better lineup, but he's batting low in the lineup. So we're talking borderline fifth outfielder types. And even then, like, if it's more you're forced to play him there than you're just settled with him as your fifth outfielder. You're going to be constantly looking out for a better option. I don't think the upside is significant enough to recommend Leody Taveras beyond that.
All right, let's quickly promote a few things. Make sure to download and follow our 5-minute podcast, FBT and 5, wherever you listen to this podcast. And a big thanks to everybody watching us live. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That's youtube.com/fantasybaseball today. Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll talk about the Willson Contreras injury right after this.
And they're starting to get in the groove.
So impressive.
Block your schedules. Aces are coming to CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back in, and it looks like my fantasy season is over. No, I'm just being dramatic, but I do have lots of Willson Contreras shares, so it is going to be tough sledding in those two catcher leagues trying to replace him. He suffered a fractured left forearm and will miss 6 to 8 weeks, and it's a really unfortunate injury. He got hit by JD Martinez's swing right in the forearm, and he was just writhing in pain. It looked like it was a pretty bad injury as soon as it happened. And it's a pretty big blow because Contreras was playing well. He was batting .280 with 6 home runs, 2 steals, and a .949 OPS. Ivan Herrera, my guess is that he will get as much run as he can handle moving forward and definitely makes sense as an ad in 2 catcher leagues. Only batting .215, 3 homers, but the quality of contact metrics look really, really good for Ivan Herrera. It's got some other names that could be out there in 1 catcher leagues as replacements. Logan O'Hoppe is 73% rostered. Travis d'Arnaud is 63%. And then each of Elias Diaz, Bo Naylor, Tyler Stevenson, Mitch Garver are all under 50% rostered. Do you have a preference from that group as a replacement for Willson Contreras?
I mean, the preferred would be Logan O'Hoppe, who I think has just kind of gotten squeezed out in 1 catcher leagues because there are more quality options than are needed. And Logan O'Hoppe, if he happens to be out there, he would be the first choice. I think beyond that, particularly in a 1 catcher league, given how disposable catchers are, I wouldn't mind just going with the hot hand, Elias Diaz. If the Rockies are at home, he's always good there. Travis d'Arnaud, okay, he's getting regular playing time now with Sean Murphy on the IL. In the long run, I would still bet on Mitch Garver and Bo Naylor being better. I understand why their roster rates drop below 50%. They've been terrible, and in those 1 catcher leagues, there are enough that you don't have to deal with terrible for very long. But I'm not willing to abandon the upside there for either of them. And I think there will come a point this season where they're hot enough that the roster rate rises rapidly. And I do think I would prefer both of those to Ivan Herrera if it comes to that. Obviously, 2 catcher leagues, Garver and Naylor never got dropped, but and Herrera would be a great choice to pick up there. But yeah, the fact Herrera hits the ball hard it's the most important thing a hitter can do, but we don't have a lot to go on other than that. And so I'm not willing to say he's like some slam dunk breakout here for the Cardinals.
Other options in 2-catcher leagues, my goodness, hold your nose, hold your ears, whatever you got to hold, because it's not pretty. Ivan Herrera, as we mentioned. Anybody else stand out, Scott? I mean, one of the Yankees, there's Austin Wells, Jose Trevino, one of the Pirates, Yasmani Grandal, Joey Bart. Anybody that I missed? I mean, I think either of the Blue Jays could be available too.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say Danny Jansen's been hitting well since he returned from the IL and has been getting the more regular playing time of the two. I think I wouldn't mind picking up Kirk in a 2-catcher league because at least there's a chance he gives you something worthwhile. I would prefer like Joey Bart to him, who is now, well, I don't know how that playing time is going to shake out now that Yasmani Grandal is back. Yeah, I think I would prefer either of the Blue Jays guys over either of the Pirates guys. Who else?
But yeah. Herrera's ahead of
all of them, and is
okay.
He's available in almost 90% of CBS leagues.
Yeah.
If you have to go really deep, yeah, I guess that's where you look into Joey Bart. He's only 5% rostered.
I'll throw one other name out there. This is probably 15-team 2-catcher leagues, but Ben Rortvedt has actually hit pretty well for Tampa Bay, and they sent Rene Pinto down. So I think he's going to get the bulk of the playing time, at least against right-handed pitching. So just another name I'll throw out there. But the big news, Willson Contreras will be out 6 to 8 weeks with a fractured left forearm. The other news and notes, Gerrit Cole completed his second bullpen session on Tuesday and is expected to throw another this weekend. He appears on track to return at some point in June. We mentioned Cody Bellinger was activated. It was Alexander Canario who was optioned back to AAA, not Pete Crow-Armstrong. PCA actually started in center field in this game with Bellinger at DH. Grayson Rodriguez feels much better and hopes to be reinstated once he becomes eligible on May 15th. He's on the IL with right shoulder inflammation. Kodai Senga is scheduled to throw another bullpen later this week, and the hope is that he'll be back in late May when he becomes eligible. Seiya Suzuki will begin a rehab assignment at AAA on Wednesday. Paul Sewald was activated from the IL. Kevin Ginkel is going to slide back into a setup role, and he could be dropped, right, Kevin Ginkel?
In most leagues, I mean, obviously not holds leagues, and in some of those 15-team roto leagues where anyone who emerges as a saves option goes for like $1 million in fab, maybe a holdout just a little bit and not drop Ginkel just in case Sewald suffers some kind of setback with those oblique injury. Because remember, he had to start that rehab assignment twice because he felt tightness in the oblique still and waited 11 days before making another rehab appearance. So yeah, in those deeper leagues, maybe hold on to Ginkel a little longer, but most people could probably drop him.
Brian Bayo will return from the IL Sunday against the Nationals. Christian Javier will return from the IL this weekend to face the Tigers. Lane Thomas took batting practice on the field Tuesday, his first time doing so since he went on the IL with an MCL sprain in his left knee. TJ Friedl was activated and hit leadoff for the Reds against righty Zach Gallen. Friedl finished 0 for 4 with a strikeout. Jason Dominguez is about 2 weeks away from beginning a rehab assignment. He is working his way back from Tommy John surgery. 48% rostered, big prospect, lots of upside. Just not sure that he'll get the call when he's ready, Scott, because the Yankees are healthy. I don't know that will last, but they have a very crowded outfield. They have Verdugo, they have Judge, they have Soto. Stanton is the DH, and all the batting average is low. He did hit his 7th home run of the season here on Tuesday. So
118 miles per hour. I believe it was the hardest hit home run off Justin Verlander since StatCast started recording such things.
Wow.
I believe that I saw that stat. Don't quote me on it. But I believe that's true. So, yeah, I don't mind stashing Jason Dominguez if you're one of the very few people with a free IL spot right now. But I will point out, you said he's 48% rostered, and he doesn't appear to have an opening as of now. TJ Friedl is only 56% rostered. They're close to the same there in terms of roster rate. TJ Friedl is back. He's back hitting leadoff. It was must-start player regardless of format last year. And, he had the crazy low exit velocities, and maybe he won't be able to match last year's home run total. Or maybe he will because he plays half his games in Cincinnati. He should steal a lot of bases either way. I think given outfield is clearly the position where there isn't enough to go around. The fact that TJ Friedel is as available as he is something you should take advantage of.
All right. Tyler McGill will make another rehab start at AAA on Sunday. And what do you think happens with the Mets rotation, Scott? Because they have McGill coming back. They have Kodai Senga hopefully coming back soon. David Peterson is on a rehab assignment as well. Jose Butto wasn't great on Tuesday. 5 innings, 3 runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. Still has a 3 ERA and a 115 whip. But how are you projecting the Mets rotation? I guess from, I don't know, the end of May on, basically.
So here I am making another vague reference to something I may or may not have read. Okay, I can confirm, by the way, not just hardest hit home run, hardest hit ball by anyone against Verlander in the StatCast era. Okay, so covered my bases there. Mets rotation. I saw something suggesting that they may go 6-man. I don't remember where I saw it, but it's something they may do. It had to do with Christian Scott and why he would be able to stick around, even with Tyler McGill coming back and eventually Kodai Senga coming back. 6-man rotation would actually benefit Senga since that's what he was used to in Japan. And I think that's a possibility. If that doesn't happen, I mean, Butto has more starts like this. I don't think he has a death grip on a rotation spot there. And I know Jose Quintana struggled too. He's kind of a bigger dollar guy, but I think Scott is safe as long as he continues to perform. It mostly comes down to that, right? And I think that's true.
All right. And then Jack Leiter is likely to make his second career start on Wednesday against the Oakland A's in the second game of their doubleheader. Obviously a pretty good matchup, although I think Oakland's actually been hitting the ball pretty well recently. We'll see what Jack Leiter could do there. Obviously not looking to add, but rooting for the kid. Let's see what he could do. Other waiver wire pitchers who performed well on Tuesday. Christopher Sanchez had a big bounce back against the Blue Jays. 7 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts, only had 9 swinging strikes, but did a better job, obviously, in terms of being efficient. And it was his first quality start since April 17th. He's down to 77% rostered and could be a 2-star pitcher next week against the Nationals and at the Mets. We spoke about Patrick Sandoval. Frankie Montas returned with a great start against the D-backs. 6 innings, 2 runs. One of those was earned with 7 strikeouts to only 1 walk. Still only had 10 swinging strikes, but did a great job limiting hard contact. And his velocity was up big time across the board. Fastball was up almost 2 miles per hour. The sinker was up almost 2 miles per hour. Still want to see more whiffs on the splitter because that traditionally has been his best pitch, but thought this was a pretty encouraging start from Frankie Montas. Scott, how would you rank those 3? Sanchez, Patrick Sandoval, and Frankie Montas?
I would rank them Sanchez, Patrick Sandoval, and Frankie Montas. But by ranking Montas third, I'm not saying I'm totally down on him. That the fact his velocity was up almost 2 miles per hour across the board in this one, very encouraging sign. And obviously we've seen huge production from him in the past. I think the fact that his splitter is getting its usual whiff rate, more or less, and the fact that his velocity is where it needs to be, I could see him coming around and going on the sort of run that makes people who are dropping him now regret dropping him. Having said that, I understand the situation we're in fantasy baseball right now, where there are just constantly new pitchers worth picking up, and you have to drop somebody. Montas might get squeezed. Montas might get squeezed out. I could see that happening, but I do retain some hope for him, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. One name in deeper leagues who has quietly pitched well this season, Trevor Williams. He was dominant against the Baltimore Orioles of all teams through 5 shutout innings, 2 hits, 8 strikeouts to 0 walks, only 7 swinging strikes in this start. He's made a pitch mix change this year, throwing his sweeper a lot more. Last year it was 3% usage. This year it's up to 18%. And it has been a very good pitch for Trevor Williams. A 143 batting average against, 43% whiff rate. He's got a 196 ERA, a 106 whip, 18% rostered. Any enthusiasm here, Scott, for Trevor Williams, who is doing things a little bit different this year?
Yeah, it's easy to seize upon that sweeper with its near 45% whiff rate, which Trevor Williams has never had a pitch like that before, 45% whiff rate. It's easy to say, aha, that is why he has a 196 ERA and 106 whip, but I don't really buy it. The overall swinging strike rate is still terrible, like 8%. And the strikeout rate is not very good. The walk rate is not very good. He hasn't allowed a single home run yet. And you know, it's not like he's some extreme ground ball pitcher. The ground ball rate is up this year, but it's not so good that he should be allowing no home runs. So I think there's a lot here to suggest, even though the ERA estimators look pretty good for Williams, the fact that he's given up no home runs is a big part of that. And I expect he'll come crashing back down, regressing to the mean here soon enough.
3 names that I'm pretty sure can be dropped. All had pretty bad starts on Tuesday. Kenta Maeda, Logan T. Allen, and Edward Cabrera. Those guys can go, right?
Yeah. I mean, the one that might cause me to hesitate a little bit is Edward Cabrera, because that upside is so enticing. But how long are we going to go on with this? I mean, even with good matchups, you can't trust them to come through. So I would drop. These are 3 guys that I drop for Patrick Sandoval, or frankly, these are 3 guys that I drop for Frankie Montas.
Mm-hmm. For any of the 3 that we mentioned, right? Sanchez, Sandoval, and Frankie Montas a little bit earlier on.
Sanchez for sure. Yeah.
Let's run through some waiver wire outfielders. And Alex Verdugo, these are names that could be out there in 3 outfielder leagues, more so shallower formats. Alex Verdugo has hit well with the Yankees so far. He went 3 for 5 with his 5th home run, added 4 RBI. He's batting .275, 812 OPS. He's consistently batting cleanup versus right-handed pitching since April 27. The quality of contact and the batted ball data doesn't really support what Verdugo is doing right now, but it's a great spot in the lineup. He's 76% rostered. Brian De La Cruz went 1 for 4 with his 7th home run. His StatCast data is actually great. He's pulling the ball more this year. His expected batting average, 286, expected slug, 519. Again, that's Brian De La Cruz. It has been a struggle so far for Lars Nootbaar since returning, but he had a solid game here on Tuesday, 1 for 2 with 3 walks and his 2nd home run. Another one who's hitting the ball really hard, 91.8 average exit velocity, but lots of ground balls, a 50% ground ball rate so far. And Max Kepler, who has 4 straight multi-hit games. He went 2 for 4 with 2 doubles. He's batting .323 with a .915 OPS and is 47% rostered. Scott, how would you rank those names in 3 outfielder leagues? Verdugo, Brian De La Cruz, Nootbaar, and Max Kepler.
I would rank them Nootbaar, number 1. Big believer in Nootbaar. I had him as a sleeper hitter this week. I'd rank him number 1. I think I'd have to rank Verdugo number 2. De La Cruz 3, Kepler 4. Maybe swap those last 2, put Kepler ahead if it's a points league, because the strikeout rate is consistently low. The fact De La Cruz is a low OBP guy in a really bad lineup, like, he's got to do all the work himself.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's never going to be useful, but I don't think he can be more than useful, no matter how good his StatCast page looks. It's interesting that Lars Nootbaar has been hitting so many ground balls. He's the one I like the most, remember, of this group, because his big emphasis this offseason, he worked with Nolan Arenado, actually, was elevating to his pull side, the thing the thing that has been the key to Nolan Arenado's success throughout his career. He's one of the best at elevating to his pull side, and Lars Nootbaar worked with him this offseason to try and mimic that. Nootbaar being someone who hits the ball a lot harder than Arenado does. It hasn't translated. He had a high ground ball rate last year too. The pull rate is up for what it's worth. It's a small enough sample that I could see it changing, but the fact that Nootbaar is such a good on-base guy and hits the ball as hard as he does, he doesn't need to be. He just needs to be a not terrible fly ball guy, I think, to be impactful in fantasy. And hopefully this game is the start of him picking it up, because I think there's a lot of upside here still.
Yeah, I agree. People who listen know I've been trying to make Lars Nootbaar a thing for the past couple of years. I really like the skill set, the eye at the plate, how hard he hits the ball. The expected numbers look really good too. 263 XBA, well, maybe not really good, but much better than his actual numbers. 263 XBA, 449 X slug. Lars Nootbaar is currently batting 183. I think he's a name.
That's about 70th percentile for both, and
yeah,
doesn't sound super that the expected stats there, XBA, X slug, it's about 70th percentile for both, which sounds better probably than just rattling them off in a vacuum.
I think he's a name, Nootbaar, that I would be looking to buy in deeper leagues too, like 15 team or even 12 team 5 outfielder leagues. If you could just get Nootbaar for next to nothing, I think I'd be trying to acquire him via trade if I could. A couple names in deeper leagues. Johnny DeLuca, who we spoke about extensively yesterday, he was one of our players of the night. He continues to hit pretty well so far with the Rays. 2 for 3 with a double and a walk in his first 5 games. He's got 7 hits, 1 homer, 10 RBI, and 2 steals. He has started all 5 games, 4 of those coming against a right-handed pitcher. Lamont Wade is hitting very well, but is in a strict platoon with the Giants. 1 for 2 with 3 walks and 2 RBI. He's batting .351 with a .927 OPS. That comes with only 1 homer and 1 steal. And then we'll throw Leody Taveras in this mix. But Scott, how would you rank those in deeper leagues? Johnny DeLuca, Lamont Wade, and the aforementioned Taveras.
I'll gamble on DeLuca, I think, as sort of the mystery box here. Taveras would have to be number 2 over Wade just because Wade sits so often. But yeah, there's a lot to like here about DeLuca. I mean, the fact that the Rays like him enough to play him every day, I did not see that happening. I thought he was going to be a strict platoon guy and, the lesser half of a platoon. But he's not striking out much. He wasn't a big strikeout guy in the minors either. But so far, it's a 10% strikeout rate during his time. It'll get worse than that, but it's encouraging to see a player so early into his major league career making contact at that rate. And to go with that contact, he puts the ball in the air a lot. He pulls the ball a lot. He could be, I don't know. I'm not going to say he's going to be their outfield version of Isaac Paredes, but the profile isn't dissimilar.
And he might be able to chip in 15 to 20 steals too on top of that. So I think DeLuca is a really interesting player. I don't think this one matters, but it was a huge game. So I will just mention that Andy Ibanez went 4 for 4 with a double dong, 4 runs and 4 RBI. He's only started 2 of the past 6 games for the Tigers. For the AL onlyers out there, he might matter. That's Andy Ibanez. Let's take our final break. When we return, we'll get into the hitters that are picking it up. We'll do that right after this.
From the world of Sonic the Hedgehog, is there anyone stronger?
No.
Tougher?
No.
Hungrier?
Grapes was an interesting choice for someone who doesn't use fingers.
Knuckles, now streaming only on Paramount Plus.
Did the same ads play on the audio that play on the video here?
No, they don't.
Oh, okay. Stupid.
Why? What were you going to say?
I enjoy Knuckles eating the grapes. The visual and especially the sound of it. I enjoy that so much.
Yeah, I've actually heard great things about the show, so might have to check it out.
It's Knuckles on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, go watch it. 5 hitters who
That's the name of it, right? Knuckles?
I think so. Now,
The Sonic the Hedgehog character.
Should I play it again to find out?
I don't know.
5 hitters who are picking things up lately. Jose Ramirez went 3 for 4 with a double and 2 RBI over his last 3 games. He has 5 hits, 2 homers, and a stolen base. The batting average is low early on here, but power, speed, counting stats have all been there for Jose Ramirez. Randy Arozarena went 1 for 3 with his 6th home run, 2 RBI. And over his last 5 games, he's got 3 homers and 2 steals. Yes, we need more hits. He's only batting 152. And there's been some weird stuff in the batted ball profile. Lots of fly balls, lots of infield fly balls. I think Arozarena might be trying a little bit too hard to elevate so far this season. Bryce Harper, we mentioned him up at the top. He is getting into one of those grooves right now. 3 for 3 with his 9th home run. It was a grand slam. And over his last 18 games, Bryce Harper is batting .333 with 6 home runs, 21 RBI, 90.2 average exit velocity. His teammate, Bryson Stott, 2 for 4 with his 8th stolen base. And over his last 8 games, .360 batting average, 2 homers, 9 runs, 5 steals, 93.7 average exit velocity. It's a small sample size, but it's a good sign from Bryson Stott, who had a terrible April. And then Jazz Chisholm went 1 for 4 with his 5th home run. And over his last 3 games, he has 5 hits, 1 homer, and 3 steals. Anything that stands out from this group, Scott? Maybe you're encouraged or, I don't know, discouraged under the hood on Jazz Chisholm, Bryson Stott, Bryce Harper, Arozarena, and Jose Ramirez.
Well, there was never a concern for Bryce Harper, of course. I've always felt Randy Arozarena was a bit overrated, but as streaky as he is and as ugly as his Statcast data has always been, I wouldn't say I was ever concerned there either. Jose Ramirez wasn't concerned. I think the only one of these players that I really ever expressed concern about this year was Bryson Stott. And a lot of that had to do with him sitting against left-handers. Not every left-hander, but some left-handers with the addition of Whit Merrifield. But presumably, it's not going to happen as much anymore with Trey Turner out. Stott sliding over to shortstop, eventually regaining eligibility there. And Merrifield taking over at second base. I want to confirm that was the alignment for today because it was yesterday, I know.
Bryson Stott played second here on Tuesday. Edmundo Sosa at short with Whit Merrifield in left. But you only need 5 games at shortstop on CBS. And as long as Trey Turner is going to be out like 6 to 8 weeks, I think that we probably are going to get shortstop eligibility from Bryson Stott.
It looks like Johan Rojas got the day off, which, he's not doing much at the plate, so that could continue as well. But the bottom line is Stott's playing time, I think, stands to improve with the Trey Turner injury. And him picking up at the plate only makes that more likely.
All right, we've got some hitters who needed a big game, and they got it. Corbin Carroll was moved back up to the leadoff spot on Tuesday. His first time that he's hit higher than 7th in the lineup since April 22nd. He went 2 for 5 with his 2nd home run, 5 RBI. He's batting .211 so far this season. His average exit velocity, 84.9 miles per hour. With a 27.5% infield fly ball rate, the expected stats are terrible. I just want to stop there, Scott, because we haven't talked much about Corbin Carroll. How worried are you, if you are at all? I mean, he's still running. He's got the 8 stolen bases on the year, but the quality of contact, he could just be off. The fact that he has that many infield pop-ups, it seems pretty weird, but what are your thoughts?
Well, this is not as simple of a case as Bryce Harper and Jose Ramirez, who we talked about in the previous group. There was a lot of concern, especially you, Frank. I mean, you were one of the loudest voicing this concern about that stretch in the middle of the season last year where Corbin Carroll seemed to be in agony over his formerly surgically repaired shoulder. And it happened twice in the span of a week. We thought, oh, geez, he's out for the year. But then he was back within a couple days. And it didn't happen again the rest of the year. and through their long playoff run, but the power production wasn't as good. And that may have just been coincidental. It's not like every player produces the same number of home runs in the first half and the second half. But that it aligned with the shoulder issue, it raised a lot of concerns. And then he gets off to this kind of start after also looking horrible in spring training, I'll point out. Okay, I overstated that. He did not hit a home run in spring training, but he didn't look horrible. He actually hit 315. But he's been horrible, and the home runs weren't there, and the home runs haven't been there as much since those shoulder issues came to light. And it makes you wonder. It does. I've moved Corbin Carroll down in my rankings behind players like Aaron Judge and Jordan Alvarez, who was being drafted ahead of, obviously. And that goes for both formats, even roto leagues, where you would think the stolen base upside would make me a little more hesitant to do that. I've seen some offers, I'm trying to think of a good example of a trade offer somebody showed me where they would be getting Corbin Carroll in like a buy low scenario. And I decided it wasn't enough of a buy low for me to take the chance. Trying to think of a good example of that, but I don't know. Like maybe it was like Jose Ramirez for Corbin Carroll. What were you thinking?
I was just looking at the outfield rankings, and the next name up is Adolis Garcia.
I would trade Adolis Garcia for Carroll myself. So I'm like, again, I'm not hitting the panic button here. I'm just taking this slow start for Corbin Carroll, which is more likely than not just a slow start. But I'm taking it. I'm being a little more cautious with it because I see reason to believe it may not be a slow start.
Other hitters who needed a big game and they got it. Anthony Volpe went 1 for 5 with a 3-run homer. It was his 4th of the season. In 25 games since being moved to the leadoff spot, he's batting 200 with 2 homers, 4 steals. Power speed is still there, but 49% ground ball rate, lots of infield pop-ups too. It feels like he might be pressing a little bit. It might be a little bit too much pressure for him leading off for the Yankees right now. Julio Rodriguez went 1 for 3 with 2 walks and his 8th stolen base. Still only has 1 home run on the season. The strikeout rate is up this year. The pull rate is actually way down for Julio. I think that might explain why the power has been down so far this year. Pete Alonso, 2 for 5 with his 9th home run, added 3 RBI. He's only batting .212 with a 742 OPS. The quality of contact way down for Pete Alonso, 85.9 average exit velocity. Thought that was kind of interesting. Vinny Pasquantino went 3 for 5 with a double, 3 RBI. His previous 13 games before this one, he went 143 with only 3 extra base hits. Michael Busch homered for the first time since his 5-game homer streak. And in the 15 games between home runs, 167 batting average with a 40% strikeout rate. Scott, anything you'd like to add on Busch, Vinny P, Pete Alonso, J-Rod, and Volpe?
Okay, well, J-Rod, Pete Alonso, high-end players. They've been high-end players since their rookie season. And I don't think anything you could point to right now as a potential red flag I would take particularly seriously. Yes, Pete Alonso's average exit velocity is down. When you're slumping, it's going to be down. And obviously he has not hit for the kind of batting average we expect from him. The strikeout rate is fine. It's about 21%. There's nothing to worry about there. The max exit velocity, fine. He's hit a ball almost 114 miles per hour at one point this season. I don't think there's any reason to believe Alonso is like nursing an injury or that there's anything going on beyond just a rough patch in which he still hits 9 home runs. So it's nice when you have a player whose rough stretch can still include 9 home runs. That's what it means to be a high-end player, usually. Julio Rodriguez, he's got the 8 stolen bases, right? He's not being totally useless here. He's just they haven't delivered up to expectations so far, but not in a way that I find particularly concerning. everything regresses to the mean, right? I've made this case over and over again. The more concerning ones from this list would be Anthony Volpe, Vinny Pasquantino, and Michael Busch, because they had not achieved to the level they were drafted at. Certainly not Volpe and Pasquantino. Busch, he went undrafted in most leagues, but he got picked up basically everywhere because of that home run binge he went on. So regressing to the mean for them, we don't really know what it means. They're still early enough in his career that I could say we don't really know what it means. But to this point, it would mean less than we valued them as. And so that's why I'd be, I'm not totally as my opinion on them isn't as resolute as it is for Julio Rodriguez and Pete Alonso. But overall, I still think Anthony Volpe is going to be a top 12 shortstop because he gets on base at a high rate, because he steals a lot of bases. And I think Vinny Pasquantino is going to be fine too. You look at the exit velocity readings for him coming back from shoulder surgery. That would be my main area of concern. They're fine. They're better than they were last year. And he's striking out 10% of the time, walking more than he's striking out. Vinny Pasquantino, everything under the hood looks great. I think he's going to be fine. I'm perhaps even more encouraged about him than Volpe. Michael Busch,
I would say buy low on Vinny P in a points league if you could.
For sure. I'd buy low on him anywhere.
Yeah.
Michael Busch, on the other hand, if he's going to be a guy who strikes out a third of the time and walks less than 10% of the time, because he always got reach base at a high clip in the minors, but like the plate discipline is awful for Michael Busch. The plate discipline is untenable for a points league. And I think that's the sort of league where you'd be most likely to drop him anyway. The smaller roster sizes, those are the kinds of leagues where you've got so many pitchers you want to roster and maybe so many injured players too, that you got to find a way to clear roster space. And while I think Busch, I'm still high on him from a broad perspective and think we're going to like where the home run total ends up, the way the plate discipline looks for him, I think makes him somebody you can move on from points league, if only in the short term, to free up roster space. And he was actually one of the 24 players I featured on an article, came out Tuesday. 24 over roster players, guys that are probably okay to drop in shallower leagues. Michael Busch was among them. So he's the one of this group that I would be most pessimistic about.
All right. Would you be looking to sell high on any of these three starting pitchers? Cutter Crawford turned in a quality start at the Braves. 6 innings, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts with 17 swinging strikes. He had at least 4 swinging strikes on 4 different pitches in that outing. He's got a 1.75 ERA and a 1.08 WHIP. There will be some regression just because the strand rate is high right now. He's a fly ball pitcher, and the home run to fly ball rate is pretty low so far for Cutter Crawford. Ronaldo Lopez, solid on the other side of that game. 5 1/3, 2 runs allowed, only 1 of those earned, 4 walks to 5 strikeouts, and he has allowed 1 earned run or fewer in 5 of 6 starts. Same, I do think some regression will hit at some point here. Obviously, he's not going to pitch to a 1.53 ERA. Innings, too. What's the cap going to look like for Lopez, who was a reliever last year? And Kyle Harrison has allowed 1 earned run total over his last 3 starts. This one in Coors Field, 7 shutout innings with 2 strikeouts. I don't get it. I don't get it with Kyle Harrison. Maybe I'm just selling him short.
Yeah.
Doesn't really get whiffs. I don't get it. I just don't get it with Kyle Harrison. And maybe he just continues to make me look foolish here. But Scott, would you be looking to sell high on any of these? Harrison, Ronaldo Lopez, and Cutter Crawford?
I made reference to that article, 24 over rostered players who it's okay to drop in shallower leagues. Kyle Harrison was one of them too. Because he doesn't really have anything but a fastball. He was like a 14K per 9 guy in the minors, this huge prospect. He gets to the majors and there's not a secondary offering good enough to come anywhere close to those strikeout numbers at this highest level. And, he only had 2 strikeouts in this start. I think, look, in shallower leagues, I don't know what you could really get for Kyle Harrison, because I think it's more likely you just drop him to clear a roster spot for somebody else. But if you can at least make the try, and maybe in deeper leagues you could even pull off a sell high with Kyle Harrison now that he's allowed a combined 1 earned run over his last 3 starts. So it's a good time to try it. He has, he's not going to. The strikeouts don't look good. The arsenal isn't deep enough. I imagine there are going to be times when his innings are cut short just from the state of development that he's in. And so it's worth trying. Reynaldo Lopez, you might be able to sell high more successfully, because the surface level numbers basically look good. And I'm not saying like he's going to totally like crash and burn here, but I do think the odds are long that he'll be able to sustain this, given his what we saw from him in the past as a starter. The fact that the control's a little shaky, the innings issues. I have no problem holding on to Reynaldo Lopez since he pitches for the Braves, and it's going to get a lot of run support, you would think. But it just depends on what it means to sell high. You know, if he's like a top 70 pitcher for me, he's not like a top 40 pitcher for me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Cutter Crawford, I mean, you could call him a sell high too. I think I'm most confident in him going forward. I think he's going to be pretty useful pitcher, better than a streamer type, pretty close to must start, I would say, going forward. But he's not an ace. He's not even, he's a little less than a strikeout per inning this season. And so I could see a way to upgrade at starting pitcher using him. So if that makes him a sell high, then I guess I could technically call him that. Though of these 3, Cutter Crawford, again, is the one I'm most confident in.
I agree with you completely. I actually really like Cutter Crawford. And look, to a degree, any player could be a sell high. It's, again, emphasis on that high. If you can get, top 30 starting pitcher value for Cutter Crawford, sure, I would agree with doing that. But he is doing some really interesting things. He's getting whiffs. All 5 of Cutter Crawford's pitches had an xWOBA of under 300 entering the start. He also had a 2.92 expected ERA entering the start. So limiting hard contact and getting lots of whiffs. I really like what we've seen from Cutter Crawford so far this season. 2 names who are moving up the rankings. I don't know exactly how far. I guess we'll let you know on tomorrow's podcast when we update the rankings. But Shota Imanaga and Yoshinobu Yamamoto were both awesome here on Tuesday, as Imanaga has been all season. 2 earned runs or fewer in all 7 of his starts. 7 innings, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts, 20 swinging strikes, 15 of those on the splitter, which was just ridiculous in this start. He's allowed 5 earned runs on the season. He's got a 1.08 ERA. He has a .82 whip. There will be a regression. There's no doubt about that. He's not going to pitch to this level all season. But man, unless you're getting like a bona fide top 15 starting pitcher in return for Imanaga, I don't know that I would want to trade him right now. And then Yoshinobu Yamamoto had the longest start of his career. He was up against the Marlins, 8 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts, 0 walks, 17 swinging strikes for Yamamoto. And if you eliminate his first start in Korea, it's a 1.76 ERA and a .90 whip for Yamamoto. Scott, I think the arrow is pointing up for both of these guys, as it has been all season.
Yeah, and obviously everyone was really high on Yamamoto coming in, but man, what did everybody miss on Shota Imanaga? And I know like you were pretty high on him as a sleeper, and he was kind of a trendy sleeper. But when I say everybody, what did everybody miss? Now I'm talking about scouting reports I read. I'm talking about the fact that the best offer he could get was 2 guaranteed years at $11 million per.
It's such a good
I think I got the contract terms right here. And then there are some team options after that. So even more team friendly. Yeah. Like when Yamamoto was setting a record for free agent contract for a pitcher over 300 million, right? And Imanaga's getting like Kyle Gibson money. Like what happened? How? by ranking him where we ranked him, we weren't exactly being contrarians, you know? If anything, we were being optimists relative to what the market said he was worth. And he just looks amazing. And I still say there will be some bad starts because the home runs will come back to bite him. But I think the good starts will be more than good enough that nobody will really mind.
Two opposite starts, two blow-up outings here. A big regression game for Jose Barrios at the Phillies. 3 2/3 innings, 8 runs allowed, 2 homers allowed in this one. He did have 11 swinging strikes on 90 pitches, but I think we all kind of saw this coming, the writing on the wall. The underlying numbers, not as good for Barrios. They don't really support it. He was allowing a lot of hard contact entering this start. Yep. So I think that one was pretty obvious. Justin Verlander got blasted at the Yankees. 5 innings, 7 runs allowed, more walks than strikeouts. He gave up 3 homers in this one, lots of hard contact. Surprisingly, the velocity was up across the board, but Verlander now has 3 or more walks in 3 straight starts. He has 4 strikeouts or less in 3 of 4 starts, and he's 41 years old, right? Like, I guess this is part of his spring training. It could just be a slow start. It also could just be he's 41 years old. So he has another start later this week. We can see how that one goes, but I'm thinking Verlander's a bench, Scott, until we start to see more encouraging signs from him.
Yeah.
I know his other starts were okay, but even under the hood, they weren't great. He's not getting whiffs. The walks are up. So
well, but the lack of whiffs was kind of true last year too. And if you just presented me the number, the normal skill indicators we look at for starting pitchers, if you presented those to me for Justin Verlander, I'd be like, this is a pretty fringy guy. If his name wasn't Justin Verlander. But his name is Justin Verlander, and he managed to put up pretty good results even with those issues last year. And so will he again? I would assume yes. And again, we were pretty happy with what he was doing prior to this start. So I don't know that I'd go so far as to call him a sit. I'm definitely on edge with Justin Verlander. Like, he could topple over at any point. He's 41 years old. But you drafted him knowing. They had to know that when you drafted him. And I think you continue to ride it out for now. I do want to say for Jose Barrios, didn't necessarily see so much regression coming all at once, but the regression was inevitable. He entered this start despite having a 1.44 ERA coming into this start. Jose Barrios had a 4.01 FIP, 4.22 xFIP, 4.87 xERA, even worse in all 3 than last year. So, yeah, this was inevitable.
Couple other leftovers. The pitching department first. We have Zach Gallen, who had a strong start at the Reds, 6 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts in that one. Corbin Burnes turned in a quality start at the Nationals, 6 1/3, 3 runs, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, 15 swinging strikes. Zach Eflin pitched very well against the White Sox. He also apparently has a really cool new mustache. So shout out to Zach Eflin. That's the first time I've noticed it. It was 7 innings, 1 run, 3 strikeouts to 0 walks for him. And Luis Gil has turned in back-to-back quality starts. He was up against the Astros, 6 innings, 1 run allowed, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts. He gave up some hard contact in this one. The control has been really bad. Luis Gil has also allowed 3 hits or fewer in 6 of 7 starts. So he's pretty nasty and borderline unhittable. What do you have anything on these names, Scott? Luis Gil, Eflin, Corbin Burnes, and Zach Gallen.
So I had a feeling those contract terms didn't look right for Imanaga. It was officially called a 4-year, $53 million contract. So we're still talking like $13 million. Not like an amazing contract, but there are some details in there that make it more complicated than that. Anyway, getting back to these pitchers, Gallen, Burnes, Eflin, Gil, right? That's who we're talking about.
Yep.
So Burnes had a career low swinging strike rate entering this start. So even though the results were so, I was encouraged that he got so many whiffs because that's what's been lacking for him most this year. Heel, I want to talk about Luis Heel here because we've harped on the walk rate, which is terrible. 5.8 walks per 9 this year. But he has now allowed just 18 hits in 37 innings. So less than 4.5 hits per inning. The hit rate is lower than the walk rate, and not by a small amount, which you could maybe chalk up to bad luck, but he's got a fly ball rate near 50%. His hard hit rate is low, 92nd percentile low. Weak contact in the air, 2.29 expected ERA entering this start, and expected ERA is the one of the expected stat that's going to account for quality of contact the most. It's a weird profile. But and normally a walk rate that high would be prohibitive. But Heel might just be one of a handful of pitchers who's so good at hit prevention that he might just overcome it. And, the starts are going to be on the shorter side because of the walks and the strikeouts. So, it's not like he's going to be an ace, and some amount of regression is coming. But I'm not going to be totally dismissive of Heel.
Some hitting leftovers. Isaac Paredes is doing exactly what he did last year. He went 3 for 4 with his 8th home run. He's also batting .299 with a .904 OPS. Ryan Jeffers continues to mash. He went 2 for 4 with his 7th home run. He is batting .299 with a .977 OPS. Willy Adames has quietly had a great start to the season. He went 1 for 4 with his 7th home run. It was a go-ahead 3-run shot in the 9th inning. He also has 5 stolen bases, an .809 OPS for Adames. Yesterday, I brought up Brandon Nimmo as a buy high, and today, on Tuesday, he blasted a 3-run homer. The expected stats look great for Brandon Nimmo, and Max Muncy went 2 for 4 with his 9th home run, 4 RBI, is batting .263 early on with a .940 OPS. The only problem with Muncy is that he is sitting a little bit more this year against left-handed pitching, so I don't love that, but it might help keep the batting average up, which right now is .263. So,
yeah, I want to. What you said about Brandon Nimmo there. You go to his StatCast page; it's all lit up in red. It's
hot.
By the things that StatCast measures, there has never been a version of Brandon Nimmo than right now. And I wrote about him a couple weeks ago. He was one of 8 regression candidates I thought was worth highlighting. And hopefully it's starting here because, man, expected batting average .297, expected slug .540. That's 90th and 94th percentile respectively. And it's basically all 80s and 90s, A's and B's for Brandon Nimmo. He's in good shape. Ryan Jeffers, we've been getting a lot of feedback about him. People wanting us to hype him up more. And I think last time we talked about him, I said I moved him up to 13th in the catcher ranking. So he's basically in that close to being a must start, I would say, ranking among some of that second tier, that deep second tier at catcher. And the biggest thing I think Jeffers has going for him is that his strikeout rate is so much improved. I mean, he's playing a lot more too. Those two together could have a transformative impact on him in fantasy, and I think that's what we're seeing. He looks like a legit breakout. Ryan Jeffers does. Yeah, those are my biggest takeaways from this group.
Some bullpen updates for the Nationals. Kyle Finnegan struck out 1 for his 12th save. He takes over the league lead. Hunter Harvey also picked up his 12th hold of the season. So if you play in a saves plus hold league, I do think Hunter Harvey is someone that should be rostered. For the Braves, Raisel Iglesias struck out 1 for his 9th save. For the Royals, James MacArthur got the 9th with a 2-run lead. He gave up a 3-run homer to Willy Adames. He took his 3rd blown save and 2nd loss. He is up to a .432 ERA and a .144 WHIP. John Schreiber, who pitched in the 8th inning in this game, has a .104 ERA and a .104 WHIP. I don't know, Scott. You think James MacArthur is on the hot seat?
I mean, I wouldn't think it would take much. He's not like he doesn't have this like blow you away fastball like you'd expect a closer to have. And his minor league track record was pretty lackluster, I have to say too. So I don't see why James MacArthur would have like a death grip on this role. If I'm not saying he's losing his job tomorrow, but back-to-back blown saves isn't good.
For the Brewers, Trevor McGill got the ninth with a 1-run lead. He struck out one for his third save, and McGill has the last 3 saves for the Milwaukee Brewers. It's a 1.04 ERA, a .81 WHIP. He's only 23% rostered. Scott, do you think Trevor McGill is a must-add in category leagues?
Yeah, I think he's the Brewers closer, and I think he'll do fine in the role. Of course, I said the same thing about Yoel Payamps, and I may have said the same thing about Abner Uribe. Things change, but from what I can tell right now, I think McGill is going to be must start basically until Devin Williams returns.
And then for the Mets, Edwin Diaz was unavailable. Adam Ottavino got the ninth with a 3-run lead. He gave up 1 run on a walk and 2 hits, but picked up his first save of the season. To stream or not to stream for Wednesday, I think yesterday we gave out Reese Olson at the Guardians, Gavin Stone home against the Marlins, and who was the other? Maybe it was Martin Perez against the Angels. I think Jose Soriano at the Pirates is pretty good too. Paddock
Graham Ashcraft against the Diamondbacks.
Paddock against the Mariners too could work out.
But I think my favorite of all of them is Gavin Stone against the Marlins.
Okay. And then on Thursday, we have a shorter slate. Ugh. Yikes. Not much. Maybe Ben Lively at the White Sox is still what I would say.
Yeah, it's bad. I'd be tempted to do Keaton Winn at Colorado if he wasn't so bad last time out. So better steer clear of that. Thursday is not the best day for streaming.
Yep. Get your streaming in on Wednesday while you can. We're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.